I've definitely talked myself out of some bad ideas. I don't know if that counts for anything. I think it's just like when you're first starting and you have like these pie in the sky things, you have to be clear on where your skills and capabilities are and who your team needs to be.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Slow Smoke Business Podcast. I'm your host, Jarrod Morgan. And today we're going to be cooking up some cheddar chicken bites wrapped in bacon. And we're going to be talking about finding your big idea with my new friend, Sam. Sam, welcome to the show.
Thank you. That sounds delicious.
Yeah. So this is Sam Sanders, everybody, author of the book, Your Next Big Idea. Also has been in all sorts of other cool projects that we're going to talk about. But first things first, we got to get some stuff on the grill here. Apologies that you have to watch and not eat. But what we have today is I'm putting a little duck fat on the grill, one of my favorite things.
Heck yeah.
So we have some chicken breasts that we kind of made a pocket out of and put some cheddar cheese in. And then we wrapped it in bacon and we hit it with some barbecue seasoning on the outside. So you see me kind of sopping up a little bit of that seasoning here. Allegedly, word is that we may start having video available on Spotify now. And so you can watch these episodes. If you're just listening, you can watch these episodes on Facebook. You can watch them on YouTube. And pretty soon you'll be able to watch them on Spotify as well. I'm a regular Joe Rogan now with the video on Spotify.
Well, with the way that barbecue looks, it's probably a good watch.
Yeah, it'll be really good. So Sam, tell me a little bit about your background. I want to get into your book in just a second, but tell me about your background. How did you get into where you wrote this book?
I kind of have three core experiences that led to your next big idea in this book. The first was when I started this company called Wonder Shirt with my co-founder Michael Shaw, great businessman, and we were selling like performance athletic clothing. It was very like top tier high tech clothing. I was working with nano fabric, so we were working with like top tier athletes, including some athletes training for the 2016 Olympics. And during that time, I really got to see the whole creativity, ideation, entrepreneurial process from the entrepreneurial perspective. After that, I worked for an Inc. 5000, fastest growing company called ArcWeb. They do like it's like a product shop, so you come to them with technology needs, and they'll be help like build you the technology that you need. It was a great company to work for, and it was a small, fast growing company. It's while I was there, I was working on operations. I was a part of the R&D, like deciding on new product focus, and so I really got to see like the creativity and ideation process at a small, fast growing company. And then the third experience, I worked at Cognizant Technologies, large Fortune 500 company, doing business development. And there I got to see how, big companies look at, growing and like building and ideation, entrepreneurship with inside like these large systems. And so after those three experiences, I kind of came together and realized that, I have this unique perspective on how people come up with ideas, how people come up with business ideas, and put all of that together into your next big idea to basically help people with that first step of the process. Like if you want to be an entrepreneur, and you can't think of an idea, where do you start? How do you find that idea? If you're within a company and you want to try and be more creative, bring more entrepreneurial spirit, like where should you be looking? And so that was your next big idea. And at the same time, I was looking at starting another company called Herd, so I was working on those in tandem. Your next big idea did like relatively well. It won a lot of indie awards. It was a top 15 business book on Apple. And it's helped propel me into doing some more really cool things. I've written articles for the LA Times about like play and creativity. I've worked on board game design, which is like a really fun and unique thing. And we'll work with a board game company called North Star Games. So it's just propelled me forward in a lot of really unique and creative and fun ways. So that's my career in a nutshell.
When I got to know you, I was looking up the North Star thing. When you say like, oh, it's a game company, your mind goes automatically to something else. And then I saw it's like these are like old school, like cool board games, right? So it was a cool thing to see that. And my kids and I, we play board games, and it's like a forgotten thing, right? It's so much fun to do physical games. It takes your mind to kind of a different place than when you're playing video games, for sure. When we talk about the big idea, you know, what do you think is how do you determine a good idea from a bad idea, or can you?
Yeah. So within the book, like one of the most important parts I talk about is there needs to be a feasibility check on everything you do. Now, like when do you do the feasibility check? I don't think you should be feasibility checking ideas as soon as you come up with them. You know, there's got to be multiple steps where you're like looking at the idea, brainstorming around it, maybe erasing like some stigmas or like some industry standards related to the idea and thinking about maybe can you work around them in an innovative way. But at some point, you need to get a feasibility check. And there's three like quick questions I ask when I'm looking at idea feasibility check. The first is like, is there a general market for this? You know, a lot of times like people come up with these really cool ideas, but they don't really know who exactly wants to pay for this idea, who's going to move forward. You know, like so there needs to be a market of people that want this. The second question that I think people forget to ask is, does the market want it now? So this is a little tricky because when you think about certain things, like let's just say like a typewriter, like you know that was a very exciting thing. Obviously now typewriters are only really exciting to collectors, and so it's not the right timing. But if you're looking like in the future, you know, like if I told you like, oh, we have this chip that you can put in your arm that will substitute your phone, like that would probably push a lot of people off. Maybe we'll end up there one day, maybe we won't. But it's just like you need to understand like where the market is in its timing, and you can do little things to adjust market like customer and market timing via education. You kind of see that a little bit in the medical industry. Like I think it's one of the bridge enhanced ACL surgery is like a very new type of surgery for those who
Yeah.
face ACL injuries, and so that's been pushed forward and kind of used in a little bit more of a medical sense, even though like people don't 100% know what it is. So there is a little bit of pushing you can do, but it's really the medical industry is the most common place you see that. In other industries, it's really hard. It would just be really expensive and potentially cause failure.
Well, first of all, you pointed out the typewriter. The typewriters I think are really hot right now for like hipsters
Yeah.
writing poems. When I was in Austin last time. There was a hippie sitting on the side of the road that you could
Oh, I
pay
love
$10
that.
to, and he would write a poem for you on a typewriter and hand it to you. And I still haven't figured out if that's the dumbest or coolest thing I've seen at Austin, and I'm still not sure whether it's dumb or cool. But the one thing about ideas that I've always talked about is I think people spend too much time thinking that the idea has to be this perfect. Like the only way you can start a successful business is if you just hatch some idea that no one's ever thought of before,
Mhm.
and it's this breaking new ground. And that's just not true, right? I mean, there's
Yeah.
lots of successful businesses that are built on the backs of someone doing something that other people are doing, but just doing it better than they do.
Yeah.
Right. Or just executing better, or having better marketing or better customer experience, or doing it at a lower cost. And, you
Mhm.
know, I mean, my business was a pretty novel new idea, but there were other people that were trying that when I first started, and we just did it much better. And so I think people have to remember that it's the idea is a piece of the puzzle, and you've got to figure out have a good idea, but even good ideas with crappy execution aren't going to go anywhere, right? And you got to make sure that you're positioned
Yeah.
to execute on something. I could hatch the idea like, hey man, we're going to cure brain cancer. That's the idea, right? And okay, well, am
Yeah.
I positioned at all to execute on that? No, I'm not, right?
Yeah. And I think that gets into the like last point that I was going to talk about is like, do you have the resources to make this happen? And I kind of have two things that I want to say here. It's like one, there's like, do you have the skills, the technology, like the team to make something happen, which is what you're alluding to. But another part of the idea process, stepping back from like the feasibility check, is like there is a push and like kind of a cultural thing where it's like you need this amazing idea no one ever thought of, but a lot of ideas are just not like that. Like there's the scamper methodology, which is like you can put things to new use. You can amplify things, minimize, like each of the SCAMPER stand for different things. And so you know, like there's a lot of taking ideas and tweaking them to make them better. And the other thing I would say is like you need to solve the first step of any business is like solving a problem, catering to a need, or like fulfilling a want. And so like if you're not doing one of those things, then you're not going to get off the ground. Regardless, even if you have like great execution, you need to
Yeah.
hone in on like what that problem, need, or want is. And so those are the three things I would say in response to that. Like make sure you have the resources to do it. A lot of ideas are built by just adjusting other ideas, and then you need to make sure that you're solving a problem for someone.
Do you have an example of a bad idea you've talked somebody out of before?
Oh man, let me think for a second. I think like let's see. I've definitely talked myself out of some bad ideas. I don't know if that counts for anything. I think it's just like when you're first starting and you have like these pie in the sky things, you have to be clear on where your skills and capabilities are and who your team needs to be. And so, like at the time, there was a time where I was looking at my own idea of like retractable headphones. This is way back in the day
Mm.
before Bluetooth was a common thing, and it just I thought it made sense because like I carried my headphones everywhere with me. But it really like I was not a mechanical engineer. I didn't have the right background. When you did research on the technology, you can kind of see the direction it was going, and so talked myself out of that idea. So I'll take the hit myself versus deal it out to someone else. But you know, a lot of these ideas they take, you know, like when you have conversations, it's not necessarily like, oh, this is a bad idea. You're just kind of asking questions to make sure that you know the idea is really thought through.
You shouldn't be afraid of having a bad idea, though, because if you're afraid of hatching a bad idea and explaining it to people and they laugh at you or they think it's dumb, I mean, that's just part of the process. Like, I came up with some pretty
Mhm.
crappy business concepts before I hit on a good one, and actually came up with some ones that I still think were good ideas. I just couldn't execute on them.
Yeah.
I had a real estate website that made a ton of sense at the time, but I mean, I wasn't in that industry, and so it was really difficult for me to execute on it. I think that I think there's got to be a process by which you can sort of ferret these things out of whether it's a good idea. And it's part of what you talked about too, but talk about how you bring these ideas to other people and consider their feedback and whether or not they're positioned to give you feedback you should listen to.
I think you know there's like this fear with some new entrepreneurs that people will steal like your ideas, which I is it
Yeah.
just it's statistically not really that realistic. It's just like somebody would need to you would need to talk to somebody who wants to start a business, who understands the space as well as you, and who like you know like wants. It's just there's a lot of things that need to go that way. And then on top of it, they would need like the idea came from you, so they would need to like you know be a better like ideator than you, but you're the one who came up with the original idea. So I'm like a big advocate of sharing. When I think about sharing, there's three different categories I put it in. So there's sharing with industry people, and so that's like you're getting like kind of expert feedback on like what's happening in your industry, what that means for how you're building your idea or your business, and that's important to consider, obviously. And then there's the talking to your market. So who's like actually out there? That's very important to consider because it's like you need to be able to really hit in on those like problem needs and wants, and even hit in on some emotions. Like if you can, you know, pair that with something that they truly like hate or find annoying. You know, like I always tell people that when they're looking for ideas, like in everyday conversation, like listen for the word hate because that's like indicating someone's having a problem or they wish they could do something or they have to do something. Like these types of words are like triggers for you to like you know try and find your idea. So listening to your market, and then there are people that you know like you should share with outside of your you know market or your industry, and you know just kind of get an outside perspective. Sometimes that outside perspective is refreshing. You know, when I was running Wonder Share, I remember I was talking with I think it was at like a family barbecue, simple this, and you know someone gave me like a really great idea about how I could potentially like think about using the like shirt technology in a towel, and he was just a 13-year-old middle schooler, just like listening and thinking. And so sometimes it's just weird ideas happen from weird places. So
Yeah.
just listen and focus in on your market, focus in on the industry to understand how to build a business, to market for how to cater to your customers, and then just always listen.
Yeah, I think it's funny you brought up too. I'm gonna check our chicken here while we're talking. I think it's funny that you
Yeah,
brought
let's do
up.
it.
Ooh, yeah, I got a little cheese popping out of that one. That's nice. I think it's funny. Let's flip these bad boys. How's that sound? I think it's funny you brought up the whole like I don't want to tell you my idea thing because I can't tell you how many times I have run into an entrepreneur who doesn't want to tell me their idea, and I'm just trying to tell them like, dude, I had a guy who didn't want to tell me his restaurant concept that he was looking to open, and I'm like, dude, I am. I love food, but I am the last person you need to worry about opening a restaurant. It's just
Yeah.
such a to your point, it's just such an unfounded fear. I mean, I guess if you had an idea for a restaurant, don't go tell like an established restaurateur, what you're thinking about doing. If you think they're going to steal it, but maybe you should, right? And maybe you
Yeah.
should talk to somebody from that field who can go, yeah, that's not going to fly, and maybe they're wrong. I mean, they may go, oh, that's not going to work, and you take their feedback under consideration. They may not be right, but it may
Yeah.
be enough for you to sort of identify what the roadblocks are going to be for something like that. Um, I don't know. It's just we have this like weird rock star complex in entrepreneurship that's happened in the last 20 years of like, once Steve Jobs invented the iPhone, he became this sort of godlike figure in entrepreneurship where everybody thought that that's what it looks like to be an entrepreneur. You have to create this world changing product and you have to be on a stage in your turtleneck and hold your thing up. And that's just, I mean, he is the outlier in that situation, right? It's just not a normal way that plays out. And I think there's so much emphasis on um, that sort of like the cultism of entrepreneurship that it sort of hides the dirty part, the hard working, the crunchy part, right? The getting up early and just working and trying things and failing. And I talk about that on the show all the time. Like it's not pretty starting a company. Like the people think that you're some genius and like the line between genius and crazy idiot failure is very. I mean, it's just a thin line, right? And it a lot of times the idea can seem like a stupid idea until it works.
I think there's a couple things I want to say about that. Like, first, I don't think people realize, like, the majority of entrepreneurs aren't even in that space. It's like you have the local cleaning companies and you have like all, like your local mom and pop convenience store. Like, all those people are entrepreneurs, like they're building businesses, and they're not going to be on the stage like Steve Jobs, but they're building. Sometimes they're building family businesses. Some of them are, can build really profitable enterprises, and so like those people need to be recognized as well. I think they sort of get pushed under the rug a little bit with our current culture, but yeah, I think there's another element of it's just a long roller coaster is probably the best way to put it. It's just like there are days as an entrepreneur where you feel like you're on top of it and it's going great, and there are days where it feels down and it's really hard, and you have to like think about like like a lot of different decisions. And when you get recognized by press, or at that point like you're as big as Apple, it's like you're only sharing the ups, but the downs are a big part of what pushes that forward.
And the process of striking out on an idea can sometimes lead you to the big breakthrough, right? And sometimes I don't know. I mean, I started a company that was a service that would watch you take an exam over a webcam. And that was like a decidedly dumb idea when I first heard it. It was pitched to me as a potential solution for us as a school. And my initial reaction was, that's pretty stupid, right? I mean, who's going to want to do that? And then I end up kind of coming around and going, well, maybe, and then building, the biggest company in the world that does that, right? And so it just doesn't have to be this shining great idea. Sometimes ideas have got to kind of find their moment, right? And sometimes you start on a project where you have I don't know, you don't have the idea fully fleshed out until you start talking to customers. I think that's another big part of it too. Is like,
Yeah.
if you hatch an idea, you need to go talk to people. To your point earlier, you need to go talk to people, but especially talk to people who might buy it, right? And ask them like, hey, would you pay money for this? And listen to what they say, right? If they say, you know, I don't think so, that's a hard stop, man. You better figure that out before you go forward on a product, or a service or whatever it is you're building. Like if somebody that would potentially buy it has not said, yeah, I'll pay money for that, then you haven't figured it out.
Yeah.
I mean, you just haven't, right? I mean, you got to, at the end of the day, businesses go out of business because they run out of money. They don't sell enough stuff. And so if you haven't gotten enough feedback from your potential market that somebody's going to buy something, then you're not ready to launch on something. You're not even ready to start working on it.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And one of the things that you're talking about with the cameras, this is another good example. Like that's a great example of market timing. Like at some point, that probably would have been like a little bit odd, and then there was the right timing for it, the right need, and then all of a sudden it takes off. So that's just like and again, like the when and there's a whole section on your next big idea on sharing, but it's just like that's an active part of the ideation process. It's like you have that idea, but it's not really a fully fleshed out idea until you're talking about it.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, the timing on Procter U, when we first came out, one of the biggest challenges was getting people webcams because webcams were not standard issue. This was in '08 and '09, right? And so this was pre everything you buy having a preloaded webcam in it. And so it was a big deal. The Microsoft VX1000, I'll never forget that model number. It was the webcam that we just tried to sell to the world. Like, listen, buy this thing. It's like $30 or whatever. And then once everything started to have a webcam in it, it kind of changed everything. It made it a lot easier. And so, I guess we were a little fortunate in that perspective. I do think we knew that the market was going to go that way, where they were start putting webcams in there in everything that you buy. But you know, I don't know. I think there's a lot to it, that people skip over. The talking to customers. I keep coming back to that. I mean, I don't I can't tell you how much smarter I seem just by simply asking smart people questions
Yeah.
and listening, right? And letting that inform my opinion.
So I 100% agree. Like like customers drive everything for something like that. What's always interesting is there's like the kind of I think the curve on like when people will pick up new technologies. And so like it starts with the early innovators. And so like when you talk to industry folks, it's like what are the early innovators doing? Like before the personal computer was everywhere, it's like there were still people working with computers, and so like you can kind of get a direction of where your market's going to go. And so like the insight that you had, to see that, webcams are going to be a regular part of the business is great. The insight that you're looking at your customers and like getting actual feedback that yes, I would pay for this, and that's like great as well. So I, like it's the sharing is just such a critical part. And sometimes sharing you'll get like other things. Sometimes you'll find a partner. Sometimes you'll find someone that wants to join. Sometimes you'll build on your idea a little bit more. So there's a lot that you can find from sharing.
Are you writing another book at any point? Have you got any ideas for another book? What's your big idea for another book?
I am in the process of like getting things together to work on another book. I have three in mind, but I have to wait and see what the market demands. There's a point where I'm going to build out these book proposals: one on creativity, one on play, and one building on some of the problem identification stuff. And there needs to be like market feedback. That it's funny that you say this because it's all connecting, but like once I build those book proposals, it's going to go to people in the industry, go to
Yep.
people like readers, and be like, which do you find value in? And so that's like something that I'm in like the process of doing, along with doing like more article writing and stuff like that, like more with like recently with the LA Times and trying to push more articles out there to build brand, because that in the book industry, that's a lot of what pushes people to make decisions.
if you hadn't have shared the potential book subjects after going on and on and on about sharing your ideas, like if you would have been like, I don't want to talk about that, I was going to be like, hypocrite, like, come on. But yeah, I mean, that's interesting. So you say creativity is one concept, right? What were the other two?
Yeah, so the first one is like quick tips on like, science backed tips on creativity. There's like the research around creativity is a little bit tricky because we don't really have a really standardized way of measuring creativity. So it would be kind of taking that space and organizing it with like some of my experience and being able to
Oh,
like
that's
kind of do like
interesting.
a quick tip because like what exactly is creativity and when you think about, I mean, we have this high level picture when you think about it, like from a scientific perspective, like how do you measure that? And so there's a couple different ways to measure that, and then there's like pulling that together. So that would be the first. The second is on play, and so like how play can impact like our business lives, creativity, stuff like that. And then the third one I'm looking on is would be more on like one of the things I talked about earlier is like looking for that word hate when you're trying to identify problems, and so it would be a deeper
Mm.
dive into like that concept. So that's kind of like what I'm looking at now. These are like uh very baby ideas. So you're getting to hear them at the very beginning
Yeah,
stages.
baby.
So I don't have it all built out yet, but that's kind of the direction that I'm looking to move.
So Sam, you talked about creativity. Like I think, do you think creativity can be taught, or do you think it's something that people just have?
So I'm a believer that creativity can be taught, but that some people start with just like a little bit of a head start. So I think one of the things about uh, the whole idea process, a lot of like figuring out ideas would be categorized as creativity.
Hmm.
You need to know to look for those problems, needs, and wants to be able to come up with ideas. You need to understand all of the rules or like the stigmas, I call it in the book, of like your specific industry to be able to break some of those rules to get something that's really creative. And so like there's kind of like this philosophy in business ideation that you can go through to learn this process. But like it's everybody kind of starts at a different point. Everybody, there's kind of like a self-fulfilling like pattern going. If you don't really believe you're creative, you're not going to be creative, and it kind of repeats over and over through like the school like through maybe your schooling system or something like that. So like first off, it's just like most people can come up with a brilliant business idea. You just got to understand the process that goes through, and that's kind of the point of your next big idea, to get people over the finish line.
That was a very good job of steering it back to your current book that people can go purchase. So I do think, I mean, when you talk about creativity, I think there's also like a version of creativity. There's like people that can hatch a brand new thing.
Mhm.
And I was really fortunate growing up. I had these classes that I got to be in elementary and middle school that were Pat's classes. They called them. It was like gifted classes, and there were teachers in there that would allow you a tremendous amount of free reign. And what I always, looking back on it, I think now is there's a kind of creativity that is just a full hatch a new idea that nobody else saw. And then there's like a version of creativity that comes from like an iterator, right? So they take somebody else's like off the wall concept and they take it a couple steps further, and they take it a couple steps in a different direction. And you would look at the work of our class, and um, I remember we were in an art class, and there was this one kid at some point who did this incredible. I can still picture it in my mind. I don't know how I'm going to describe this, but like it was a picture of a room that was drawn like with the wall in the back, and it was like 3D, as if the walls on the sides are getting bigger as they approach to you. And he did this like incredible room with all these weird things in it, and all these other kids, myself included, saw this like crazy perspective thing. And you saw like 25 kids do all these weird takes on this one sort of 3D perspective, and some of them were great and some of them were just most of mine were just bozo stuff, but right. But like I think that's a version of creativity too, and I think you can steer that back to like, how do you start a business? Well, sometimes you don't have to hatch a brand new thing that no one's ever thought of. Sometimes you just got to make the better mousetrap, right? Sometimes you just got to take something and iterate on it Take something that wasn't online and bring it online. Take something that was not in the cloud and put it on the cloud. Take something that was hard to do and make it easier to do. I mean, I guess it doesn't always have to be some earth shattering eureka moment.
Yeah, and I think even some of the like earth-shattering eureka moments are not even earth-shattering as you think. Like, take for example, like Spotify, which is the company that a lot of people love. It's
Yeah.
like, well, there was also Napster and Pirate Bay and all of these other people, and so they're. I mean, Spotify is an incredibly innovative and creative company, but it's just like it didn't start from zero. Is like there are other people out there, and so
Yeah.
that's a big part of it. And sometimes that doesn't really get told in the story 100%, but that like there's usually a lot of iteration in any ideation.
Well, yeah, listening to music online was not Spotify didn't invent that, and frankly,
Yeah.
neither did Apple. Right? I mean, who did invent that? I don't know. MIDI files back in the 90s or 80s, right? I guess, or whenever somebody created. I guess when you created the MP3 was sort of like the beginning of the modern version of listening to songs online. How old are you, by the way, Sam? I got to know where you fall in the MP3
Where
like
I
memory.
fall, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm 28, so
Okay, dude, don't talk to me if you didn't have LimeWire open on your computer, trying to download a full Dave Matthews album with all the song titles misspelled so it would like dodge all the filters to block all the copyright material. Like if you didn't come from OG Napster, okay, you got it easy with the Spotify stuff, Apple Music. You just, what do I want to hear? Click. Do you know how much time I had to devote to downloading an album back in the like if you wanted an album,
yeah.
it was like I had to go find it, download it, and then come back and hope it finished downloading the next morning. Maybe,
Yeah.
right? It was
Yeah.
sometimes it was like a couple of days or something. It was terrible speeds, and then you'd get it, and then there would be like okay, I just downloaded the new Nelly album and there's some like DJ Clue, like all over it was some weird remix, and
Yep.
you didn't know what you were getting until it was too late, and you're like, God dang it, So yeah, which by the way, I want to come clean publicly. I was one of the people that was banned from Napster by Metallica, and I held it. I don't know if you've seen the like documentaries on Napster or whatever, but like Metallica was the band that came after Napster, and I had some Metallica songs on. I had because big Metallica fan, and they had me banned. And dude, I held a 20-year grudge on those guys. I remember watching on TV.
Wow.
I saw it on the news, and I saw this attorney walking in with a box. He was Metallica's attorney, and it was all these papers, all these usernames that they had found in the evidence to ban them. And I was like, "Oh, that's weird." And I spun around on my computer and tried to log into Napster, and it was like, "Your account's been banned." And I was like, "You son of a gun!" So I held a 20-year grudge on Metallica, and then we made up at a concert in Atlanta. And by made up, that means I went to the concert. But I went to the concert and enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think it's funny, like with that kind of stuff, sometimes when you push back on people, it has a negative effect. It's an important like business lesson, you're very strict on keeping the rules and you push back on, your fans. That can be something that hurts your brand. Whole different conversation, but that's important to think about.
Yeah, it is. All right. I think we may. I snuck a temperature probe in the chicken bite here a minute ago. So we're very salmonella conscious here on the Slow Smoke Business Podcast. So we want to make sure we get these things nice and done. They look, can you see them, by the way? I don't know if you can see that on
They
the
look
overhead.
delicious. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like a little kind of chicken pocket with some cheese in there and some bacon around it.
Yeah.
I think we're done, Big Daddy. Get you some of that.
It's making me hungry.
So do you ever grill out outside? You ever do any of that?
Yeah, I do. I think I was, like saying earlier that, oh, like in preparation for this podcast, I was telling people I was just like, I don't get to grill that often anymore because I live in like downtown Washington, D.C. But anytime I go back to my family's house, I'm like, we should rip out the grill. Let's,
Yes.
barbecue. So yeah, I'm a fan.
Always check the temp in the fattest one, right? You want to get in the middle.
Yep. Safety first. Safety first is
Safety
checking the
first. I
fattest
think I
one.
might need to
So
throw these bad boys back on for a minute. All right. Well, we're going to finish up the chicken here. Sam, if they're interested in finding your book, where can they find it?
Yeah, you can just go to yournextbigideabook.com. You can look me up. My name's Sam Sanders, as you probably know. And there's a social media you can follow. So anywhere like that.
I love it. Sam, I'm about to jump in and eat me some chicken bites with some cheese on it. Thank you so much for being here. And let's have you back soon. That was really cool. I can't wait to hear what ideas you've got coming up soon, man. You've got ideas of your own cooking.
Yeah, what a beautiful pun. I love that. Thank you so much for having me.
If you guys enjoyed this episode, make sure you like and subscribe to us on Spotify, on Apple Music, on Stitcher, on your mom's radio, wherever it is, and follow us on TikTok, follow us on social media, Instagram, Facebook. Look for us at Slow Smoke Business.